Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Break into Law School. I have an exciting person on with me today, and we're going to get into a topic that is near and dear to me, and I believe we need to talk about it on our journey into law school. I'm joined with Jennifer DiSanza, who has an amazing testimony about her journey in law school and the twists and turns that it can take. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, LoVetta. I'm excited to be here. I have a passion for law school. I've worked in law schools and with law students for 20 plus years. We're going to talk about health and well-being and mental health and how to prepare. This is a subject I am passionate about.
And I love the fact that you're passionate about it because it's one that's near and dear to me as well. So I'm excited to hear all about it. Start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what it is you actually do.
I started my career in management right out of college. Then I moved into HR management. And while I was in HR management, I really wanted to have a more thorough understanding of the law. I wanted to be able to explain it. We had a corporate HR department, but several of the people that worked in that department had law degrees. And I decided that a law degree would be complementary. I honestly never intended to practice. And while I was going to law school, I transitioned from that company to working for my law school. Kind of funny how it all happened because I was also getting my master's degree. So I was working full time, I was going to law school, and I was getting my master's degree in organizational development. I couldn't do it now. This is my early 30s. So really, one of the things that made me want to work at the law school level is I remember after my first year, and again, I was going at night, I got my first grades and I was so upset. I'd never gotten grades like this before. And this is a common thing you'll hear. I never knew anybody who went to law school. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I'm first gen. And so I thought it would be just like grad school, right? Taking classes and everything, but I was sorely mistaken, especially going at night. I always tell people who are in part-time programs that it's not really part-time, it's a full-time job with almost full-time academics. So it really is a lot. So while I had started my master's degree, I was working on like organizational projects. This is before I started working at the law school and working on things about group dynamics and team dynamics. And I started doing my projects within the law school. So, like the Student Bar Association, I did a group project on them looking at communication and how it functioned. And I got really into it. I had talked to the person who was in student affairs at the time at my alma mater. And I said, I really want to see these projects and how I can develop them. And out of that came student leadership program that I developed. As I was talking to this person, she's one of my mentors. She said, well, I'm about to be promoted into an assistant dean role, but I will have a director position open. Would you at all be interested in that position? And I thought about it and I realized student services in a law school or anywhere really is like being an HR manager. Right. So instead of being an advocate for employees, you're an advocate for the students. I made the transition to student affairs and I didn't look back for 20 years. So one of the most important reasons why I believe in student services and all the wonderful people who work in student services is because we have the ability and the time to help you figure out your path. Not everybody's journey is going to be the same. I worked at 3 different law schools. I remember at my last law school, somebody coming to me who was a part-time student saying, I keep getting these emails for this and that and all these organizations. Do I need to participate in that? And I'm like, you have to do what's right for you. You have to prioritize. She had a family, she had kids, she was working. So figuring out what would work best for her. She wasn't going to get a big job. She was actually a paralegal and was going to stay at her firm and take it over, basically. So it really taught me how to look at each person as an individual. As students come in, we learn so much about it. But I really wanted to make sure no students have ever had the same experience as I did, felt alone and felt defeated. So helping them with that journey, and that's where mental health and wellness comes in, because my mental health was at its worst while I was in law school. A lot of health problems, and I had some mental health problems. And I realized that switching the game and being able to help other students be like that was what I was meant to do.
So you mentioned that your mental health was at its worst when you were in law school. And I think that that's something not a lot of people really are prepared for. You're prepared for college and you think that law school is going to be like undergrad, but it's not. Tell us a little bit more about what you were going through and how you were able to get better.
I fortunately had a wonderful support system. I was very lucky that my boss at the time was aware of what's going on. I had some professors I was close to, and then my friends in law school and outside of law school were really helpful. I went to therapy. I started to do the things to take care of myself. I'd been in therapy before because I struggled with mental health in the past, but it was more preventative than it was trying to come out of this deep hole. And so I really thank therapy and medication for helping me get back on track. The ironic part about this is something that people are working on right now, is when I had to sign up for the bar exam, they asked me questions on the bar exam application about my mental health. I had to get a letter from my doctor stating that I was fit. I can't tell you how depressing that was. I mean, I was crying. I'm like, why do they want to know about my mental health? And how does this fit into character and fitness? That I had a very difficult time doing that. The good news is nowadays, more and more states are removing or altering the questions based on behavior. And we're seeing a push. I think New Jersey is the latest one to have changed their questions. So it's moving through this country slowly but surely.
I think that's something that I know lay people are just not aware of, is that it's not just so much what you know, what laws you can memorize, how good you can argue or research a particular case, but it also has a lot to do about you as a person becoming a lawyer, period. Not even a successful lawyer, but even to become a lawyer, it has a lot to do with you and your character. For those who may not really understand what that means, can you explain that just a little bit more?
Sure. I would think some other professions are similar to this, but you get involved with people at usually their worst time. If they're calling a lawyer, if they are in the middle of something that they need help with, and you're their support system. So while you are working with a client or clients, you are going through the process with them. There's a phrase called vicarious trauma that we've talked about in the legal profession. It's like if you're working at a domestic violence pro bono case and you're hearing what the person is going through, or if you can relate to it on some level, it heightens your emotions. And it really makes a difference in how you take care of yourself. As an attorney, you have to have boundaries. It's very difficult to, but very important that you can set up some boundaries when you know you have to take care of yourself. So you're getting involved with these people as their attorney, which is supposed to be not emotional. You're not supposed to connect with them, but it's very hard not to. Because if you're a compassionate person, and a lot of people go to law school because they want to help people, it's very hard to separate the two. So not only do you have to worry about your own mental health as you're going through this, what is the additional pressure your client is going through, or what's going on in the case, that all leads to, in some people, now this doesn't happen to everybody, but in some people, that just adds to the burden that they're feeling when it comes to their mental health.
So, in some cases, you would say you've known people to get what's known as secondhand trauma. Like it's not directly to you, but it's something that you get because you are empathetic to your client. How can people combat that or have that not happen on such a great scale? Because we all know it can happen, but how can we try our best to avoid it or help it when it does?
I think it's important to know yourself, right? I think that's the first thing. As a student prepares to go to law school, there are going to be challenges. Just know that up front. There are going to be challenges. It may not be like anything you or anybody you know went through before. So you have to be open. What I love about student affairs and other people that work in the law school is they've seen it progress. So it is imperative to start building up your mental health and your strength while you're in law school, instead of going into a practice where you're already at a low point. Like I said, law school was the lowest point of my career. You want to take care of yourself throughout law school so you can be healthy going into the bar exam and going into practice. I always tell students, find out what the offerings are on campus, ask about health and well-being, make sure their counseling is available to you. One of the big things that's happened in law schools recently, probably in the last 5 to 10 years, is embedded counselors. So instead of a student having to go all the way to the campus counseling center, which For some students, it may be in a different place than where their law school is located, because some law schools are off campus. The law schools are bringing in-house and embedded counselors there to just meet with law students. And the power of that is that we, as student affairs professionals, as students, get to partner with somebody whose profession it is to help the mental health. So if you do yoga, if you work out, if you do all these things before law school, do not let that go away while you're in law school. Find the time and figure out how to keep it, because those are things that maintain your mental health, right? And if you are getting treatment before you go to law school, make sure you have a continuity of care while you go into law school. Make sure that if you need accommodations for exams, you take advantage of that, because I can't tell you how many people may not have gotten accommodations in undergrad because, they didn't need it. But they get to law school and they realize their ADHD or their mental health makes it very difficult for them to deal with the type of stress that comes with law school.
You said something so important. A lot of people have managed their depression, their ADHD, their anxiety, all of their, what we would tend to refer to as just a little quirk when it's small and it's little and it's manageable. But when you take on something as big as law school, those little cute quirks can sometimes become bigger issues. Now, depression is one of the most common mental health disorders, and it's also, I think, globally estimated that 5% of adults suffer from it, and it affects more women than men, which, of course, we women are not surprised by that because we often suffer in silence and don't want to say anything and, don't want to be seen as whiny. But you said something really important. You say you have to know yourself. And it's important to know yourself because only you know when you're just not quite right or when you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and you notice it before somebody on the outside notices it because you're starting to mask it. Speak to those people out there who may be looking for help, don't necessarily know where to get it, don't know where to go, or don't know the first step.
So I know for me, and I can talk from personal experience, that when I'm not motivated, when I'm not feeling excited to go to work or to go to school or whatever the activity is, that's a barometer for me to realize, hey, what's going on? There's something that clicks. And I think when I was younger, it was much harder to define. I think as I get older, I can be much more proactive, but it's understanding yourself. So I always use the example. I look at myself from high school and I look at what I remember. And I remember being active. I was an athlete. I remember having a good time, being a good student. I don't remember the bad stuff. And then as I went into college, which was the first time I actually had therapy in undergrad, as I moved into college, I felt different. I felt not good enough. I felt pressure. I didn't know how to do undergrad. I have two older brothers that were in undergrad before me, but I mean, it was just assumed that I was in a position where it was just assumed I'd go to college and I'd move on and I'd get master's degree. I would be academically successful. And I wasn't necessarily academically successful in undergrad at the beginning. So I'm like, something's going on. This is not who I am. I remember talking to a therapist and saying, what if I am just lazy? What if I am this is just who I am? I will never forget what she said to me. She's like, you wouldn't be where you are if you were just lazy. You wouldn't have made it as far as you were because you have this drive. Sometimes it gets dampened by your mental health, but and I tell students that all the time because you want to give up. Sometimes you have to go through medication changes or you have to go through therapist changes or whatever it is, but you have to be willing to see the difference. If you are taking the LSAT, if you are at the point where you're getting into law school, it is not about you. Mental health is a disease. It's a disability. Everybody needs help. And I'm sure you all heard about if you had cancer, if you you're talking to a friend of theirs, you wouldn't tell them to just brush it off because it's not true. It's not accurate, but it really is understanding how you change. Now, when you move into law school, you're going to have lots of changes. Some of them will balance out and some of them will get worse. But it's knowing like, this does not feel right to me. I've had plenty of students come to me after how many months of law school and say, I don't think this is for me. And then we go through what my boss did for me at that time. What is your goal? Do you want to work in big law? Do you want to work in public service? Because that can help you de-emphasize some things and re-emphasize some other things. Or it can say, maybe what you can do with a master's of law. Or maybe what you want to do, you can do with some other degree. I've had students go to get a master's of social work and then come back and get their law degree, and that helped them. And so there is this tie into not being afraid to listen to yourself, because we all have gut feelings, when we know something's right, but we ignore it. And just like you said, women tend to ignore it or brush it under the table because of the expectations placed on them. So I would, going into law school, you'll have a group of people that you're comfortable with. You'll have plenty of people at the law school who are there for help. Your student affairs people, your career services people, and professors. There are more and more professors that are teaching towards this. A new ABA standard is on professional identity, and mental health and well-being is tied into that professional identity.
That's so important. And to go back when I said, women will just brush it off and just keep going, I think we do it because, sometimes we're often in masculine spaces and we don't want to be seen as a little weak girl. Oh, she's just saying that. And oh, that's how women are. We want to appear like we're strong, we got it all. And even sometimes men, they want to appear like they have it all, but there's power in saying, I need help. And I think we don't necessarily get that often, or we don't want to realize that we need help. No, I can do it. I can do it. You probably can, but at what cost? But at what cost? Because it's going to cost you. Now, whether it's going to cost you now or later, it's going to cost. You're going to have to pay for that. You mentioned setting boundaries earlier, and I know oftentimes people set boundaries once it's a little late in the game. Do you suggest setting them clear from the very beginning, even in the law school journey, as well as, becoming a lawyer, having those set boundaries for yourself and adjusting them as needed?
I do. And I always think of law school as the test space, right? You can figure out what works for you. I'll have students they'll come to school at 9 o'clock in the morning and they will work till 5 in between their classes. And then they go home, especially for those who have families, they're done. And then they study 1 day a weekend. That was not me. I can tell you that because I was working during the day. But figuring out what works for you. And if something doesn't work, don't be afraid to change. I know for me, study groups was not the way to go. I constantly compared myself and I was frustrated, so I'd rather study alone. Now, was that self-isolating? Now that I can look back at it, yes. But now I have the mechanisms to understand that. So figuring out how you study best, and know that however you did it in undergrad may not work in there. So try the study group, see if it works for you. You may find you love it, even if you've never used it before, or maybe study on your own and then have a day a month or 2 days a month where you get together with people. Talk to your professors to make sure. Do not wait to ask questions till the review period. There's a reason why there is a format for taking notes in law school and studying in law school, is because it works. So if you're handwriting your notes and then typing an outline later, make sure you point out any question. If you don't feel comfortable asking in class, go to office hours or ask after class. I know some people, that's how I wasn't great at asking questions, but I would make a note in my notes that said, find out what this is. Make sure you understand this before you go to the next step, because it's all foundational, especially in your first year.
Very important, because I know a lot of people struggle with anxiety, which is another mental health issue that we all tend to kind of feel a little bit at times. And that can make you apprehensive to ask questions in class. Writing yourself a note, because I am one of those people, oh, yeah, I need to ask so and so about whatever. And if I don't write it down, or if I don't make a note of it in my phone to send an alarm to ask about that thing, then I'm going to forget. So, writing a note in your notes to make sure you get clarification in office hours or after class, that probably is one of the best pieces of advice that I think I've heard in a while, because people will get a little shy, or I don't want to ask that. I don't want to come off as if I'm uneducated. I don't want to feel stupid. And I hate that word, but nobody wants to feel it. And sometimes people can think asking a question in class means I don't have it. My classmates are going to think that I'm less than, and then nobody's really going to want to study with me. So making a note in your notes to make sure you get a little clarification, a little sidebar, introduction to sidebars, make sure you get some clarification will work. I love that. Any other good tips that you can give to somebody who may be feeling just a little bit off moving from undergrad into law school?
I always have this joke. Like, first semester, you'll meet the gunners of the class, the people who will try to answer everything. And you'll know if they did well, because second semester, they'll be quiet. Because they could talk a good game, but they actually didn't perform well. So just remember that everyone in there, not in a similar boat. You all come from different backgrounds. That's what I love about law school. It's not like you had to get a science major to go to law school. Everybody has these rich backgrounds. You're also learning from each other. Okay. So I remember the first time I was cold called Socratic method. I froze. I was so upset that the professor kept barreling it. This is really old school because I went to school over 20 years ago. But I just remember feeling less than, and like I couldn't face my fears. I couldn't face, like, this isn't meant for me. Well, luckily I had made friends in that class and they're like, oh, you did fine. You remember sometimes it worse than it actually is. I was thinking that it was just horrible and it was the worst thing over. But you know what? I got my first experience over with and I progressed from there. So use it as a learning experience. Now, a lot of times professors will say, hey, if you need today off, just send me a note or give me an index card. Or I just read something the other day that the professor had two-sided table tents with your names on it. One side was, I'm ready, I'm prepared. The other side was, I'm not prepared today. And you could choose which one you wanted depending on how you were. Now, some people, old school, will say, we're catering to students, we're doing that. But the goal is to develop confident people. I'll give you a short little example of this. This isn't law school related, but as you know, I'm transitioning into a new position. The CEO called me up this morning and said, I'm starting on Monday the 16th. Say, hey, we're going to be in Vegas the 16th through the 17th to meet a new client. How do you feel about going? And I'm like, of course I'll go. I know it's my first 2 days of work, but I'll go. You don't say no. But then the executive vice president sent me an email with the loveliest note. She will never realize how much it meant to me. She's like, I just want you to know that this is just a meet and greet. You do not have to know anything about the client before you go. We just want to meet you. They want to meet you. They want to put a face on you, but we'll be with you the whole time. You know how reassuring that was for me? I actually sent that paragraph to a couple friends and I said, this means so much to me. She doesn't know that I have anxiety. It was just the loveliest thing that I could think of to put my mind at ease.
Because as somebody with anxiety, hearing I want to meet you sends off alarms and whistles and, oh no, they want to meet me. Why? What am I going to do? How am I going to sound? How am I going to come across? What if I this? What if they don't like me? It does do a whole lot of things. And just one small, not even a paragraph, really changed the whole thought process about it and really kind of calmed you before you could even work up the storm.
Exactly. She hit it right, nipped it in the bud, as they say, right there, because I would be probably catastrophizing for 2 weeks.
It's almost like having somebody say, hey, I want to talk to you later. And then just leaving it as that. It's almost the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, just tell me now.
Right. And just that little bit of reassurance changed the whole outlook on everything. And I think it's good that we even give that to one another for people who know that a classmate might be struggling a little bit, or for somebody who has anxiety and you can kind of see somebody else who has it. Just giving them a little bit of reassurance along the way goes a long way. Do you have any self care tips or anything that you can share with students who are going into law school or who are in the 1L and beyond?
This might sound trite and it might sound silly, but I believe that sleep is the number one thing that law students miss out on and they need, because you're just building upon building. Remember, I said the classes are foundational, but your health is the foundation. And so sleeping, eating right, and if you work out, or you do yoga or meditation practice. One of the big things that's in law school, there's an organization called mindfulness. I said mindlessness. No, that's not it. Mindfulness in the Law Society, and they really focus on understanding and paying attention to what you're saying, what your body is saying, trying to cut out the distractions. And I think one of those things is some people don't like to be alone with their thoughts. Sometimes you also have to force yourself, like, what is that I'm feeling, and listen to your body. So I try to, on a regular basis, not necessarily meditate, but just slow down, have some breath work, and do some things that also put me in the position where I'm not catastrophizing. My anxiety is reduced. Walking my dog for me and being with my dog. And I know a lot of people say, but maybe you can't have a dog while you're in law school. Maybe go walk shelter dogs or work on Rover or something like that. If that's your safe, happy place, which is mine, then find out or figure out a way that you can do it more. Because if you say you don't have time, that means you don't have time for yourself, and it's just going to get worse. So even if it's an hour a week that you look forward to, maybe you have a weekly dinner with friends or your family, whomever is your support system. Whatever it is, have those. I don't necessarily think they're rewards, but have those planned out. Like, Okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this week. But on Friday, I get to do this. Okay. And Saturday, I get to do this. Oh, I'm going to my niece's birthday party. I'm going to see all my family and be prepared for that. But on the flip side, that is be able to say no. That goes back to boundaries. If you're not feeling like ready to do it, listen to yourself. I need to study for 2 more hours. I can't do this, but let's reschedule. But listen to yourself. But don't get in the habit of doing that all the time.
It's a good, healthy boundary and a balance of listening to myself and taking the time when I need it, and then also getting to work when I need to get to work. I like that you said that. Any good words of wisdom that you'd like to share with all of our listeners?
I know a lot of you are going through the admissions process now, but I always feel there is a law school right for you. And if you want to go to law school, you will go to law school. It's really important for you all to understand that. Just because this school has a name or this school has a name, don't overlook some other schools that may be the right fit for you. There are so many good schools out there that don't get the recognition that they deserve. So I would definitely look at a variety. Maybe you can't afford to apply to them. You can always ask for a fee waiver. You can always ask for help on that. But think about what is the most important to you. Like, do you want to stay close to family? Is that important to you? Or do you need to get away from family? Or do you want to be in the environment that you plan to work in? So if I want to work in Chicago, should I go to a law school in Chicago, even though I'm in Louisville, Kentucky? Think about the factors that go into the decision. Some people are just looking for the best school for the best price, right? That's usually what they're doing. But there are unmeasurables when it goes to law school. Look at the staff that's there to support you. Look at how they treat admits and what you have going on. Are they accessible? I really think the law school selection process needs to be focused on so you find the fit for you. I would never want somebody to go to a law school where they're like a fish out of water. That's when transferring happens and everything like that. So if you're going to go to law school in a big city, but you've never been in that big city before, is that the right fit for you? Would you like a more rural environment or more suburban environment? Understand that the location, the people are so important to your journey too.
I love that. And along the way, don't forget to get some sleep. Don't forget it. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for being my guest today. I greatly appreciate you sharing your journey and how other people can take better care of themselves while they are on their legal journey as well. Thank you.